The air in Grandma's old two-story house in upstate New York was thick with the scent of old books and dried lavender, a fragrance that used to fill me with a sense of comfort. Now, it felt like a shroud. This was the final day before the estate sale, and I was going through her belongings, not with nostalgia, but with a cold, hard checklist. My brother, Ethan, was nowhere to be found. As usual, he was a dedicated career firefighter, living for his job and nothing else, always too busy for family. I'd called him repeatedly, leaving voicemails he never returned. A fleeting pang of guilt pricked at me, but I quickly suppressed it with the thought of what I had done. I had orchestrated a plan to cut him out of the will. Using a lawyer in a different county and a carefully crafted fake power of attorney, a risky move I'd been planning for months, my name was the only one on the official document now in probate. Grandma had always favored me. Everyone knew it. I told myself I deserved this, a new start. As I meticulously wrapped her delicate porcelain figurines, I visualized the real estate listing, the six-figure profit that was just a few weeks away. The sun began to set, casting long, mournful shadows across the empty rooms. The house was now officially mine. I sent a text to Ethan. All taken care of. Don't worry. A lie, but a necessary one to keep the illusion going. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The first call from Ethan came a week later, his voice a little hoarse and filled with concern. "Hey, I'm so sorry I missed your calls," he began, a genuine apology in his tone. "We had a huge warehouse fire downtown. Everything okay with Grandma's house?" My heart pounded. I took a deep breath, clutching the phone tightly. "Yeah, I handled it all," I lied smoothly, the words coming easier than I expected. "The lawyer said it was easier with just one executor. Don't worry, I made sure everything was handled fairly." He was so trusting, so incredibly naive. "You're the best, sis. I'll come by and pick up some of her old photos next week." My stomach dropped. I had already sold the house, and the closing date was set. "Oh, I already packed all that up," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can send them to you." There was a moment of silence, and I feared he suspected something, but he just let out a sigh of relief. "Awesome, thanks. You're a lifesaver." He was so easy to deceive. The guilt was a low hum in my chest, a constant nagging reminder of my betrayal. I packed the few boxes I had saved, just a few of Grandma's old diaries and a photo album, and drove away, leaving behind the only home I'd ever truly known. For the next month, I became a phantom. I avoided Ethan's calls, his texts, his messages on social media. I told him I was swamped with work, that I was in the middle of a messy move. The truth was, I was terrified to face him. The house sale went through without a hitch, and the money was sitting in my bank account. The figure was astronomical, enough to set me up for the rest of my life. I bought a brand new car, a chic apartment in a trendy part of the city, and started to build the new life I believed I deserved. But the new life felt hollow. I'd walk into my pristine, minimalist apartment and feel the echoing absence of Grandma's cluttered, comforting house. I'd see families laughing together in the park and feel a deep, painful ache in my chest. One evening, a news report came on about a massive fire at a tenement building. The footage showed firefighters, including Ethan, working tirelessly to save the residents. I saw the exhaustion on his face, the unwavering dedication in his eyes. He was a hero, a genuinely good man, and I had stolen his birthright. The guilt was no longer a hum. It was a deafening roar. I tried to call him, to apologize, but I couldn't. How do you even begin a conversation like that? "Sorry I stole your inheritance." I felt like a fraud, living a lie, haunted by the ghost of a brother I had betrayed. The truth came out in a text message. It wasn't from Ethan, but from our cousin Mark. "Heard you sold Grandma's house. Didn't realize you were the sole heir. That must have been a surprise to Ethan. My blood ran cold, the words a physical punch to the gut. Ethan must have tried to get in touch with the original lawyer, only to find the new will and the horrifying truth. A moment later, my phone rang, and I saw his name on the screen. My hand trembled as I answered. His voice was calm, but the words were sharp, cutting through the silence. "You lied to me," he said, his tone devoid of emotion. The lawyer called. "You cut me out of the will." He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He was just hurt. The silence on my end was deafening. I couldn't find the words. The shame, the guilt, the raw truth of my actions all came crashing down on me. I tried to justify myself. "I thought I deserved it, Ethan. I was always there for her, and you were always so busy." The words sounded pathetic, even to my own ears. "It wasn't yours to decide," he said quietly, and then he hung up. The line went dead, just like our relationship. I stood in my expensive apartment, surrounded by my new possessions, and felt poorer than I had ever been in my life. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The lawsuit was, of course, inevitable. I was served papers a week after that devastating phone call, the heavy envelope feeling like a physical weight in my hands. Ethan was suing me for fraud, for emotional distress, and for a breach of fiduciary duty. I hired the most expensive lawyer I could find, pouring the stolen money into a desperate defense. But in the sterile, air-conditioned courtroom, no amount of money could change the facts. The lawyers, his and mine, were cold and professional, but the air was thick with a personal betrayal that hung between Ethan and me, a silent, suffocating accusation. Ethan's lawyer, a sharp-featured woman in a navy suit, presented the evidence with a chilling calm. The fabricated power of attorney, the forged signature on the new will, the swift, secretive sale of the house. I sat there, listening to the methodical recitation of my crimes, feeling a growing sense of detachment. Was that me? The woman who had done all of that? I looked across the room at my brother. He didn't look at me once. He just stared straight ahead, his jaw set, his eyes distant. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for justice. The judge looked at me with a stern, unyielding gaze, and a knot of pure panic tightened in my stomach. The consequences of my actions were no longer an abstract idea. They were a looming, terrifying reality. The legal fees were mounting, eating away at the inheritance faster than I could have imagined. I was caught in a web of my own making, and there was no easy way out. The lies were catching up to me, one by one, with no place left to hide. The lawsuit wasn't just a legal battle. It was a public shaming that shattered my entire social world. The news of what I had done spread through our family like wildfire. My phone was an endless stream of notifications. Messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were filled with angry words, others with profound disappointment, but all of them were deeply judgmental. The family that had once been my support system turned their backs on me. I was the black sheep, the thief, the one who had stolen from her own brother. The shame was a physical weight, a constant pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I couldn't go to family gatherings anymore. The holidays, which had always been loud and filled with laughter, were spent alone, eating a microwavable dinner in my silent apartment. The echoes of past celebrations were a cruel torment. I tried to reach out, to apologize, to explain my side of the story, but no one would listen. They had already made up their minds. The isolation was more painful than any legal battle. I had everything I thought I wanted, the money, the freedom. But I had lost the most important thing, my family. The silence in my life was a constant reminder of my betrayal, and I had no one to blame but myself. I saw Ethan at the grocery store. It was a random, cruel twist of fate on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was buying a single, microwavable dinner, a symbol of my new, lonely life. He was buying a full cart of groceries, bread, milk, fresh produce, for his family. He looked tired, older, and the exhaustion in his eyes was a heavy burden I had never seen before. Our eyes met across the aisle, and the air between us froze. I braced myself for an argument, for him to yell at me, to call me a thief to my face. But he didn't. He just looked at me, a long, sorrowful gaze that spoke volumes. "I just don't understand," he said, his voice barely a whisper, the words filled with a pain so deep it was tangible. "Why did you do it, sis? We could have shared it. We could have done this together." The genuine pain in his voice broke me completely. My own carefully constructed walls crumbled, and I started to cry, unable to stop the tears. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I sobbed, the words a raw confession. I was selfish. I was greedy. He just shook his head slowly, the look on his face a heartbreaking mixture of sadness and pity. "I hope you can forgive yourself someday," he said. And then he simply turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the produce aisle, surrounded by strangers who looked on with curious eyes. His words echoed in my mind. Forgiveness. It was the one thing I couldn't seem to find, and the one thing I needed most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The judge's ruling was swift and unforgiving. I was ordered to pay back the full amount of the inheritance, plus damages and court costs. The money I had stolen, and the new life I had built with it, was all gone. I was left with nothing but crippling debt and a tarnished reputation. The shame was suffocating. I had to sell everything I had bought with the stolen money. The new car, the chic apartment. My luxurious life disappeared as quickly as it had arrived. I moved into a tiny, run-down apartment in a forgotten part of the city, a world away from the luxury I had created for myself. I got a job as a waitress at a diner, my pride long gone. The people I worked with were kind, but I kept them at a distance, afraid they would find out who I was, what I had done. I was a ghost in my own life, a person without a past, without a family, without a future. I had burned every bridge, and now I was paying the price. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had wanted more, and I had ended up with less than I had started with. My life was a cold, hard lesson in the bitter consequences of greed. The guilt became a physical sickness, eating me alive from the inside out. I started going to therapy. I had to. The therapist was a kind, older woman who listened to my story without a hint of judgment. She helped me understand the motivations behind my actions, the years of unspoken resentment, the deep-seated feeling of being overlooked and unappreciated by my family. It didn't excuse what I had done, but it helped me understand it. The road to redemption was a long one, and the first step was accepting what I had done and taking full responsibility for it. I started writing letters to my family, not with excuses, but with genuine, heartfelt apologies. I didn't expect a response. I didn't expect them to forgive me. I just needed to say the words, to put them out into the universe. The days were long, filled with work and the crushing weight of my past. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. I was taking the first steps towards a new life, a life built on honesty and humility, not on lies and deceit. Years passed. I worked relentlessly, paying off my debt slowly but surely. I was still a waitress, but I was proud of the work I did. I was still alone, but I had learned to be content with my solitude. The ache of my past was still there, but it was now a dull throb, not a sharp pain. One day a letter arrived. It was from Ethan. My hands trembled as I opened the simple, unadorned envelope. It was short, the words typed and without a signature. "I've forgiven you," it read, "but I don't think I can ever forget." There was no anger in the words, only a profound sadness. He wasn't asking for a relationship, a reconciliation. He was just telling me the truth, a final piece of closure. I realized then that some bridges can never be rebuilt, Some wounds never fully heal. I had lost my brother, my family, and the life I had known. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the quiet acceptance of my fate. I had traded a house, a home, and a family for a moment of greed, and now I would live with the consequences forever. The sun set, casting a golden light on my small, humble apartment. It was a new beginning, a hard-won peace, but a new beginning nonetheless. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.